Hello and welcome today to the Maritime Prefecture. We are in Toulon with Commander Julie.
Hello Xavier Teitelman, welcome to the Prefecture. As you said, we are located very close to the Toulon Naval Base. I will try to explain to you quite simply what a Maritime Prefecture is.
So here, that means we're going to look at the theory, but we're also going to visit the cross right after, where maritime rescue operations are coordinated. So then, what are the functions of a maritime prefecture?
So, in mainland France, there are 3 maritime prefectures, one for the English Channel and North Sea area, one for the Atlantic area, and for us, the Mediterranean area. Ultimately, the maritime prefecture is headed by a civilian authority, the maritime prefect. It is currently held by an admiral, so right now Vice Admiral Christophe Lucas, who is therefore a naval officer. And what is important?
Pilot of the Atlantique 2.
And actually pilot of the Atlantique 2.
I knew friends at the 23F.
Good acquaintances. And so actually what's important to understand is that with this same person, we'll end up having 3 roles. So the one that's the most intuitive. An admiral, he is the joint commander of operations in the Mediterranean. Okay, got it. His role, his job, actually is to be the top military chief of everything that flies, everything that floats, and everything that goes underwater across all branches.
Because sometimes the Air Force is involved?
Because we have other means too. He oversees the Mediterranean area from Gibraltar to the Black Sea. All right, with the goal of ultimately ensuring a good understanding of the aero-maritime space, all right. He is under the orders of the SEMA, the Chief of Operations. So that's his first role, the ultimately military role. The second role is also a military role. We call him the Maritime District Commander, CAM, for those in the know. So, behind this bit of jargon, he's actually the head of all the naval units on land in the Southeast Quarter and at the same time in the Toulon garrison. He's the main coordinator of all the infrastructure and the security of the facilities.
And when we talk about resources, what are we talking about? Frigates, helicopters, really everything?
So, resources on land, so that would be the sailors on land, for example, the sailors who will be employed. Like in what we call the foresight, but also everything that is, for example, the semaphore network, semaphores, so we have sailors all along the coast. It can also be in certain specific centers, especially related to anything involving outreach or training.
There's BMPM, all those things as well?
Yes, it is indeed under the supervision of the BMPM part. And finally, there is the prefectural function, so Maritime Prefect. It's coordinated by the SGMER, the Secretary General for the Sea, under the Prime Minister's direct orders. So it's a functional civilian chain. And what's important is that in the end, it's the same person who will embody these 3 chains to be able to coordinate better the action at sea on the Mediterranean coast.
So what kind of action are we conducting?
In total, there are 45 missions. If we look at the decree that clearly explains these areas, which we can divide into 3 main domains, the first is the authority in charge of emergencies at sea. All right, so as its name suggests, it's about coordinating resources to ensure the safety of human life and property. So, I have fishermen who are out there, there's a collision, there are fishermen, and there's a risk of pollution. The Maritime Prefect will coordinate the operations to effectively ensure the safety of human life, the protection of resources, and the preservation of biodiversity. He has at his disposal the CROSS, the Regional Center for Surveillance and Rescue Operations, which is there on duty all day to be able to respond. Ready for takeoff and to deploy resources, he will rely on all the administration's resources. And so, concretely, that means 70 maritime assets, about 30 air assets, helicopters or planes. There you go.
We're talking about customs, we're talking about the gendarmerie, really?
Everyone, yes, all of them. So in total, that's 8 agencies, and indeed we're talking about customs, the gendarmerie, the police, and the Navy. All right, so there you go. He will be able to order the Navy to intervene, for example, in a rescue operation if necessary. All right, so that's the first major part. And to give an example, for the Mediterranean, last year there were 3,000 operations coordinated by the CROSS, and 850 of those resulted in rescue operations.
All right, so there are about 10 per week?
Yes, there are, mainly during the summer season, all right, but we also have major events during the winter or off-season periods. So that's the first major task. The second main pillar, actually, it's everything related to policing at sea, all right, that's it. The Maritime Prefect also has police authority, and so in this capacity he can regulate. So he will issue prefectural decrees and will also have the means to enforce them. So he will assign the police, the maritime gendarmerie, to actually enforce the laws that he sets.
Speeding,
Those things, exactly, that's true. No, but in the area, on the channels, in those areas of responsibility, yes, and indeed, to enforce the law. There will also be public order at sea. Yes, in the same way that we enforce it in areas where many uses overlap. We know quite a few of those in the Mediterranean. And also to cover the whole area of combating illicit trafficking. We're going to have drugs, but also everything related to migrants. And also maritime counterterrorism, which is also part of this.
Counterterrorism is also part of this branch. Maritime?
Maritime, yes, maritime, that's right, is part of this branch of maritime policing.
However, maritime piracy in the Mediterranean is quite limited.
But we would be more in the realm of military actions. Military, right? The third major mission, a whole set of missions for the Maritime Prefect, is what we call the Prefect responsible for coordinating how maritime space is used. Actually, the Prefect has the role of mediator. He will gather the different opinions so that afterwards the sea can be shared by everyone for different uses, right? Typically in the Mediterranean, it's 25% of the Mediterranean traffic and it has quite exceptional biodiversity. I think everyone now knows about Posidonia. Yes, and then his role will be to regulate in order to ensure that the different uses are respected, whether it's for leisure boating, the economy, or also biodiversity. By creating, for example, marine protected areas, MPAs, by promoting the development of what we call anchoring zones, and by regulating all aspects of anchoring. So, the Mediterranean coasts are especially attractive for yachting, so that's one of the aspects. And also by allowing economic development such as offshore wind power, for example.
So, typically I'll give you an example from my own experience. When I was on the Atlantic too, we counted whales in the Bay of Biscay. Is that the type of operation where you use radar to spot and count whales? Are those the operations that are conducted or coordinated?
Here, actually, all the French resources are asked to participate. In what we call attentive monitoring, the monitoring is precisely to report all those groups that might cross paths. And so, afterwards, to also adapt the measures and resources we use accordingly.
Excellent. I also mentioned IFRAMA, we had dropped buoys to measure salinity. All these things, that's all part of the state's action at sea in the broad sense.
So we're going to use that data from IFRAMA so that afterwards, for example, we can adapt, or when we need specific information. To create new zones, we're going to use all the scientists who work on certain maritime areas to say, okay, actually we need a protected area in this place because of biodiversity, because of specific elements, because it's an area with extremely vulnerable cetaceans.
If we go back to a very concrete example, I remember at the time there was the Erika. It was a big oil tanker. There was oil everywhere. It was a disaster. Are we ready today to deal with this kind of major event?
First, let me go back a bit to make sure we understand before answering. Actually, the role of Maritime Prefect is very old. The position dates back to 1800. It was created during the Napoleonic Consulate at the same time as the Territorial Prefect was created. He realized that he also needed a coordinating authority dedicated to the sea or the port area. Because at that time it was more about the ports than truly maritime, in the sense we understand it today. And so the role of Maritime Prefect has existed since 1800. By the way, in the various portraits we see, those are our illustrious former maritime prefects. The prefect, of course, the role has evolved over the years as time went on. And so it was quite a foundational event in the role of Maritime Prefect. Since we realized the need to have a coordinating authority who has the ability to coordinate action in case of emergency. Typically, there was the case of Erika. Afterwards, 2 other major incidents occurred, including a chemical tanker in 2000. And also, the Istiaye with the 900 migrants who actually ended up on the beaches of the Mediterranean. So in 2004, the new decree finally gave the prefect the ability to urgently coordinate all state resources. So that's to give a bit of context.
So, a crisis management center?
Without stating it's part of that evolution, it is a crisis management center. It enables quick reactions and large-scale operations. And so, to be able to rely on all the administrations to answer your question. Now, in the event of a new oil spill, are we ready to deal with it? Yes, in the sense that we have outlined our emergency plans, which allows us to check that we are prepared and to understand all the resources available. We train regularly at different levels of crisis across the different coastlines, precisely to make sure that the teams know how to respond. And we also have a number of specific skills that allow us to quickly find the right expertise and really respond to the incident. So, for example, we have a dedicated unit for anti-pollution, the Naval Base, and the Marine Firefighters Battalion, who are able to respond, especially with the ability to deploy onto ships. All right, so depending on the severity of the incident and the operational urgency, we have different levels that allow us to respond accordingly.
Friends, we have arrived at the cross, and we are accompanied by the director of the cross. Hello, hello.
Hello,
What should we call you?
Mr. Director? I don't know how to say it then. I am a Maritime Affairs Administrator. Ah, that's yours. The Maritime Affairs Administrators are the body that supervises all the cross centers.
You are not a sailor.
I'm a sailor who wears anchor insignia, as you saw, and has a background in the French Navy. I had the first part of my career as an onboard officer, and I joined the Maritime Affairs Corps a few years ago. And my first assignment was here, the Mediterranean Cross, 2008 to 2012, and back again since 2023. I'm an administrator, technically a naval officer, serving on land for the sailors.
Great. As you can see, this resembles a crisis management room.
Exactly, it's a little bit...
That's it. Yes, we have a lot of resources to coordinate. Yes, we're looking at what different sets there are.
Of course. The Cross is an operations room with different workstations, organized with rooms around the officer. He is the rescue mission coordinator and has a watch team, a bit like on the ships of the French Navy, a watch team made up of a supervisor, a watch chief. We've adopted the same terms as the French Navy. And he has 2 assistants, 2 operators at his disposal who will handle things. All the alerts that come into the Cross, alerts by phone, alerts by VHF. And the role of the Cross is, of course, to handle all the alerts, to analyze the alerts, and depending on the alert, activate a response. Whether for sea rescue, that's the first mission of the Cross, or for monitoring navigation, monitoring pollution.
Here, which area are we managing?
We manage a very large area within the Mediterranean. It's 115,000 square kilometers. This is the area for France, for coordinating search and rescue resources at sea, as well as surveillance.
Specifically, our neighbors are Italy and Algeria.
Exactly, Italy, so Rome. Our first point of contact in Italy is our colleague in Rome. In Spain, it's Madrid, and for Algeria, it's Algiers, a slightly different organization compared to the French organization. Here we rely on a center located in the capital, Madrid, Rome, and then Algiers. Here we made a slightly different choice. It's the French organization where we are located here, in the town of Lagarde.
I have to say, the view is still better than a Parisian office.
The view is extraordinary. There's no comparison between the Eiffel Tower and Toulon's Grand Harbor.
On the volume involved, over a year, I'm not going to say how many people we save. Maybe we can put it that way.
Every year, a center like the Cross Méditerranée involves almost 12,000 people. 12,000 people, so it's like a major city in the Var region. And it's almost 5,500 events handled each year. Out of these 5,500 events, a site like the Lagarde site handles 4,500 operations. The Cross Méditerranée includes 2 sites, one in Lagarde and another in Ajaccio. 4 operations off the coast of Corsica. In the end, that's 4,500 operations handled, with 3,500 operations here at the Lagarde site and 1,000 operations at the Corsica site. The rest are incoming calls that are processed but do not lead to any operational follow-up. All right, thank you.
And when we talk about deployment, it ranges from the CRS carrying out beach rescues to the takeoff of a rescue helicopter. That's the scale, thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly it. That's right. Exactly. From the volunteer lifeguard who is on duty. A beach station in the town of Cannes or the town of Valras. It really covers all the beach stations. So we go from the beach to the outer limit of our area of responsibility by calling on the resources of the French Navy, Customs, and also the Air Force. Here, so you see, it's very, very varied. We have this organization in France that relies on coordination between the relevant authorities. At sea, then, I've mentioned a number of examples, but above all, and most importantly, it's really the principle of solidarity among seafarers. We call on recreational boaters, professionals, and seafarers in the area who hear the call, a radio message, a pan-pan message, a distress relay, a relay message. And so, in the end, it's the sailor, the ordinary sailor, the one who is sailing, who has to listen and who has to change course to assist a sailor involved in an incident. Channel 16, exactly.
and there is a phone number 196. 196. It's different from the upper floor. Friends, on a day like this.
What happens then? At this time of year, we're usually in the preparation phase for the high season. But today, for example, this morning, it's a series of events brought to the attention of the Cross Rescue Center. A concern about a spearfisherman, a body discovered at sea, and yes, that's also part of the work of the teams at the Cross Rescue Center. A report by a witness on land who observes a somewhat dark mass at sea. It looks a bit like smoke, so we think, hey, fire. That's a bit of the daily routine, so a series of events handled here by the teams. And the whole operational added value of a Cross Rescue Center is to mobilize resources very, very quickly based on a rapid analysis without compromising anyone's chances. For the people involved, it means there are procedures and activations. We were talking about firefighters, and that was the case this morning. And that's basically the daily routine for the teams here at the Cross Rescue Center, with activity that fluctuates depending on the time of year, from September to March or April. We're in the low season, so it allows the teams to train and then get ready for the high season from April to September, when the boaters and people who enjoy water sports are back out there again.
As for the drills, there are also major exercises that are organized.
Yes, every year we have important drills that ultimately allow the entire operational chain across a maritime prefecture to train. And that was the case this past March 26th with a large-scale drill, an international drill as well, a drill simulating an aircraft accident. We also potentially face this kind of event in the future to handle, which allows the teams to train and to build up their capabilities, which means that in an operations room like this one, all the workstations are occupied. We have this ability to ramp up, and we also have the ability to receive external personnel. At the Cross, I'm thinking especially of doctors, SAMU doctors. Here it's SAMU 83 that's kind of our coordinator for medical resources. So, for this type of exercise, the Cross ramps up, like the entire operational chain, and especially the Maritime Prefecture, which has the ability to set up a crisis management team.
So I assume you also work with other ministries like COGIC and the Interministerial Crisis Management Center for 4 years.
Of course, yes, it's definitely interministerial work. As soon as the event grows in scale, potentially it's indeed the COGIC that can be called upon. As soon as the situation is such that the area needs reinforcements, other resources. Belonging. Atlantic, English Channel, North Sea, so it does indeed go through the COGIC, depending on the analysis of the situation. We also rely, of course, on our firefighter colleagues. Here in the area, it's the Marseille Marine Firefighters Battalion that's somewhat the expert when it comes to an incident on board a ship, and who is also able to advise a center like the Cross, able to advise, of course, a maritime prefect, but depending on the situation, we call on the resources of the other maritime regions. The Cross has a network of radio stations that allow us to receive, of course, all distress alerts on Channel 16. There's also phone monitoring via 196. The Cross is the recipient of numerous calls from witnesses on land. It's the average person who dials 196 and reports an event they've observed from land. So, essentially, VHF, since here in the Mediterranean we see that the types of interventions are extremely limited. It's a coastal strip between 0 and 6,000, so about 10 kilometers from land. And that's where our activity is concentrated, very focused on pleasure boating, very focused on water recreation, and it requires us to have excellent coordination with the resources at our disposal. SNSM, National Sea Rescue Society, our main partner for sea interventions, the helicopters of the French Navy, of course, the helicopters of civil security, the Air Force, so it's coordination over VHF. The resources, our weapon system, if I may say so, is really the VHF. And you can see at the different stations. Here you have the operator who is in charge, particularly of SAR operations, and from his workstation he is able to direct one resource or coordinate several resources, devices. So this is information that is not protected. We're dealing with open information, mainly, and we have our own system. It's a system developed by Naval Group, well known in the defense industry. And they have also developed a civilian application, SIMUS, which is deployed across all the cross centers. So it's a system that is based on a number of components with several subsystems. Here on the screen, you can see our alert reception module, a caller dialing 196 and their location in real time. And based on this information, we question them. We ask them a number of questions to determine ultimately what the event is, what type of intervention we need to carry out, and what is the best resource to deploy in response to the incident. I really want to emphasize our duty to use the appropriate means. We're not required to guarantee a result, but it's about the means. But it's the most relevant means, without reducing anyone's chances, so that requires from us a fairly detailed knowledge. Here you see an old and solemn wall map that will also be subject to a modification. We're looking at a map that's been in place, I would say, since the establishment of this cross, the Cross Méditerranée, which was established in 1968. Well, fortunately, it doesn't date back to 1968, but we have a representation of all the resources available to us, with the 47 SNSM stations, which requires us to have a fairly detailed knowledge and a close relationship with the volunteers in order to be able to activate them. The SNSM means being underway within 20 minutes, day or night, with different types of resources which allow us to respond to an incident. It's also, of course, the civil security helicopters, the famous Dragon helicopters, or the helicopters of the French Navy. We're lucky today to have the H-160, which allows us to respond effectively to calls. Let's not forget Corsica. That's this insular characteristic that we also find overseas, which means that the Ajaccio site is in very, very close contact with all the partners. And it's this connection that ultimately makes our operations extremely effective. We saw it again this summer with very serious accidents. I'm thinking especially of legs that were really severed by propellers. And fortunately, the SNSM of Propriano intervened and was ultimately able to save these people who were very, very seriously injured. So here in the Mediterranean, it's really a somewhat unique organization since it's a cross with two sites. The site here in Lagarde is a site that operates 24/7, and the site in Corsica is also a site that operates during the day, and so all-night operations are handled by the Lagarde site. We are able to respond, I would say, 24/7, no matter the season, and we can have busy activity at night. In 2022, we had a very, very intense weather event that generated almost 100 interventions in Corsica, with a phenomenon that we've been observing for a few years now, water spouts. We know about cyclones. We have this phenomenon that is now becoming more and more frequent here in the Mediterranean, even generally speaking, off the coast of mainland France, since we've observed this type of phenomenon this summer. So what's the point then? What's the point? So we need to be vigilant, we need to be able to respond effectively, and we have an organization in France that is top-notch, especially in the Mediterranean. Zones had not killed the Corsica Channel, Mediterrox arrives. And so here is one, it's the European Quiberon, a species. 2 navigation zones that are subject to specific monitoring, the Strait of Bonifacio, so a recommended two-way route that is under specific surveillance, Franco-Italian, France through the Pertusato semaphore, in connection with the cross, and the following week, La Maddalena. So our Italian colleagues who monitor the traffic, with the requirement for any ship entering this recommended route to report in. Another navigation area, the Corsica Channel with a traffic separation scheme. Here we see the northbound lane, the ships going up with monitoring provided by the Italians, and then on the southbound lane, monitoring provided by the semaphore stations. Cap course, Sagro in connection with cross, okay.
And if the Zinhanyuan doesn't follow the keep right rule, what do we do?
Well, if he doesn't comply, he's technically breaking the law. But above all, he's contacted by VHF. We make sure he's not having any trouble on board, that he understands that he's in a traffic separation scheme, and we do everything we can to get him back on the right track. And if he really doesn't comply, we have the means to notify him that he's breaking the law, so he will be sanctioned. In the Mediterranean, the coast is very attractive. If I may say so, the VAR region is very popular. This means things are managed here and the season is starting soon. All the yacht anchorages are managed here. The Cannes Film Festival and the Monaco Grand Prix attract especially the 80-meter yachts. And so our responsibility, under the authority of the Maritime Prefect, is also to grant these anchorages. Now, it may seem trivial, but it's also about respecting the marine environment. There's also that aspect which is, of course, becoming more important and which we have to enforce. So with monitoring based on information we collect, like AIS, the Automatic Identification System, we gather a certain amount of information. We also have the ability to query different databases, both French and international, to learn a bit about the ship's background, and to be able to either authorize it to continue its route or to lift its anchor, leave a mooring area, and so on. So you're at the heart of the operations center with an operational chain that relies on 3 links. Here in the middle, you have the car chief, who relies on 2 operators. The officer is a bit in the background. He is the coordinator, so he usually steps in only to veto, and it's a decision made by an officer, but it's an analysis involving several minds. It's all very collaborative, exactly.
Mr. Director, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Friends, the view was beautiful. They do an amazing job. They're there 24/7. Behind me, there's a drop zone. That means the helicopters, when they finish their mission, they come here to debrief. There are radio contact systems, and the view is exceptional. Join up, come on. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you very soon.